has been a temporary ban on the importation of drones in Barbados, which is basically the government's effort to control the proliferation of unauthorized and uncertified operators, cluttering the airspace and posing a danger to the public and possibly even aviation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast, where we'll be bringing you everything drones and how they're being used in the Caribbean for fun, research, and commercial purposes. I am your host, Elon Gabriel, and in this weekly podcast, I'll be bringing you the latest industry rumors and technology to its most innovative applications. I'll also be interviewing industry hobbyists and professionals to learn more about the impact of drones on the Caribbean. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also visit the website at pilotsofthecaribbeanpod.com for more information. Let's get into our news of the week. And in our first article, the Jamaican Fire Brigade is increasing its use of technology and advancing training to improve its response to earthquakes and other disasters. So the Assistant Commissioner of the Jamaican Fire Brigade has announced that there was a drone unit that they piloted last year, and it is now fully operational. He said that these drones would be used to assist with surveillance for search and rescue exercises, fires, and other emergency situations. There was a 5.6 magnitude earthquake that hit Jamaica in October of 2023, and that brought on a need for more trained fire safety inspectors. And these fire inspectors would be used to do everything from conduct damage assessments to see if buildings are safe for persons re-enter, to do safety training, and a whole host of other services. So they are taking advantage of the technology to improve their processes and make their operations a lot more efficient. In our second news article for this week, the minister that is responsible for digital skills and transformation in Jamaica is indicating that a lot more local businesses are integrating the technology to boost production. She has met with manufacturing companies in Jamaica, and they have indicated that they have a lot more plans to use technology and robotics in their manufacturing plants. So what that means for them is that Jamaica apparently is now seeing a shift in their manufacturing sector with the introduction of robotics being used locally. And the government has seen the need to invest in its people to keep up with that development, a trend in the industry. And as such, they've indicated that they've purchased 60 autonomous mobile robots and 20 aerial robots, aka drones. And the students will be able to take advantage of learning how to do basic to advanced designing, programming, installing, and maintenance in the robots that could be used in those sectors. So, 2 news articles this week showing how Jamaica is using drone technology in the advancement of the country. Okay, so moving on to the main part of the episode. And Olia, if you're not accustomed to long podcast episodes, get comfortable for this one. So next up, we have our very first guest on the show. And this guest is a Barbadian national who lives in Barbados and is the president of the Barbados Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Association. He is a university graduate and the CEO of CPNet Consultancy Group, which has several verticals including air operations in the commercial drone space. His focus in this space is on thermographic inspections, mapping, precision agriculture, and security applications. He has been involved with drones since 2015 and has been a member of the Barbados Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Association, BUAVA, and as pronounced BUAVA, since its inception in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Charles Pyle, President of the Barbados UAV Association. Good afternoon, Charles, and thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast. How are you going?
I'm doing fine, and thank you for inviting me.
Not a problem. So let's dive right into it. Charles, we know that you are, well, in the bio, I would have given that you are the president of the Barbados UAV Association, pronounced BUEVA. Thank you for that clarification. And you've been flying drones since 2015.
15, somewhere around there.
That's correct. So what initially drew you into the world of drones?
Okay, the company CPNet Consultancy Group is comprised of a number of verticals, and one of those verticals is a film production unit. We used to do a lot of coverage for sports, dynamic sports like polo and cycling, yachting, motorsport, rallying, where the ability to be mobile with camera angles and to get the best perspective possible was very important. Back in those days, drones were a lot more basic than they are now. As a matter of fact, the image capturing device was usually a GoPro type camera, which had the lens curvature and all these kind of issues.
Yep.
But it was better than nothing. So we actually got drones to augment our live footage and post-production footage of those kind of dynamic events, primarily cycling. As the drone technology began to improve, we got better cameras. We got cameras with thermal capacities. At first, they were fairly cumbersome flare type add-ons that you had to put on. We started examining some of the other things that drones could be used for. One of the other verticals of the company is a security outfit. We would use it initially for forward surveillance, overwatch, this kind of stuff. So we then started to see a lot of possibilities for drone usage. And as the drone technology improved to suit the challenges of these various commercial deployments, we started seeing the use and the usefulness of getting more specialized drones to cover specialized areas. I'll say up front that videography and stuff was never my forte. It was never my focus. It only came into play for the coverage of sporting events. But I got very, very involved with what was possible from the security side, infrared detection, from the public safety side, search and rescue, and then obviously having used the thermal cameras when thermography as an actual discipline came up. I migrated from the handheld devices to an aerial platform. We started really getting into that, especially as Barbados was moving towards 100% non-fossil fuel reliance by 2032, 33. So a lot of these things started to pop up around the place, and there was the need to have something that could do economical and efficient inspections of large expanses of solar panels.
Okay, understood. So basically, you got into it. You saw the need, and you
saw the need.
That, you knew how to fill this void in the market.
Put A and B together. We also had requests for things like spatial analyses, 3D mapping, and that kind of stuff. And we also, without having to invest in any real specialized equipment, we also needed to get involved with that. So those are the areas that we really concentrated on. And of course, there was a lot of work that was done for security forces, for various things, and some public safety work. So
Okay.
the whole gambit of commercial applications came clearly into focus, and we decided what niche we was concentrate on and focus on that.
Makes sense. And everything that you would have spoken about there would have been local to Barbados, because you mentioned something like polo, and I didn't even know that polo was played in Barbados.
Yeah, polo is a fairly big sport here. We have a number of very nice fields, and there was actually an annual competition back then between Argentina and some other major polo playing countries where the teams would come to Barbados and we would do some filming of that. Just the cutaways, the B-roll, because
Right.
there were two reasons. You don't want to, obviously back then, endurance was not as good in the first place. And two, the cameras were not as good. And you had to fly fairly high so that the noise wouldn't affect the horses,
Right.
which means you didn't get the best of shots. So they were just the cutaways. But,
Okay.
as things progressed, we sort of moved away from that because, that motorsport and cycling became a lot more interesting,
Right.
except for the polo season and stuff. Like yachting is only the regatta period, but cycling was a year-round thing. And then we started to do some work for the Caribbean Media Corporation to cover some sports events and even things like the Food, Wine and Rum Festival, the annual festival that we have here.
Mm.
So we started going into other things that we could possibly facilitate the use of drones to enhance the service and the deliverables.
Okay. So you have been through a wide range of service offerings in your time. What does your current drone fleet look like?
Um, the two basic models are the two Phantom 4s, which, because they have mechanical shutters, are still the best for the mappings and stuff like that.
100%.
We've got an RTK DJI drone. We've got a thermal DJI drone, Parrot fixed wing for long surveillance,
Okay.
an M20, but that's not based in Barbados.
Okay. That'd be the M200 series.
The small,
The M30.
M30.
The M30.
Mm.
Okay.
Get
Nice.
these numbers. That was so much.
Yeah,
So many.
and DJI is always just adding new numbers to everything. They had the 300 and now they just recently, well, not too long ago, released the 350. Okay. What are some of the most common applications for that drones are being used for in Barbados right now? Because I know you mentioned you're kind of moved away from the videography side of things a little bit. But what are some of the most common applications that you're seeing drones being used for?
Well, as I said, videography was never really the main thing for us. I will do
Yeah.
videography if someone requests it,
Mm-hmm.
but the main application here is videography for sports events, real estate. There is a Netflix series that runs some of its episodes through here. We have operators that work directly with Netflix
Right.
to provide any aerial shots that they would need. So it's mainly along those lines. There are a few people that do solar inspections, but of course, the requirement for solar inspections is the thermal and the software and the training. So there's not a lot of people in that. In fact, the only thermal drones, I believe, are owned by my company and the government, the security forces,
Okay.
because they're kind of expensive. The camera alone is more than half the price of the drone.
Yeah. Thermal is always a heavy
They,
investment.
they, they're pretty pricey. They're from $15,000 upwards, depending on how you fit
Right.
it, the payload.
Yeah.
Um, So it's mainly security forces,
Mhm.
photography, and now there is a growing interest in precision agriculture.
Okay. So you're looking at this is mapping out the fields and doing things like multispectral and spraying.
Multispectral and spraying.
Okay, and that's something that your company offers as well.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So you have a wide
We
range
do
of
not invest.
services.
We do not invest in the actual. We do not invest in the actual craft because
Right.
it's too specific
Okay.
for us. And what we will do is we will do the aircraft management and the piloting for the
Mhm.
client. The client will own the craft.
Okay. Okay. Understood. So based on the wide range of services that you'll offer, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen as an operator in Barbados?
Well, you mean challenges from the operational side or from um,
From
the logistics side or the
yeah
legal side or what?
the operational and logistic side of it, because getting for us in Trinidad, getting a drone in the air isn't always the easiest thing, and you really have to do. You have to get a series of permissions. Well, of course, insurance is standard, but you have to some instances you have to do your notifications of persons around. There's there can be a lot of steps involved depending on the type of operation. Do you all face similar challenges like that?
Yes, but it has improved greatly in recent times. We have an online form now, which is used for importation of a new drone, um, temporary importation of a drone for people, either tourists or professionals coming here for a period of time and they want to use it personally or to film an event.
Right.
Um, and the process here is there has been a temporary ban on the importation of drones in Barbados, which is basically the government's effort to control the proliferation of unauthorized and uncertified operators, cluttering the airspace and posing a danger to the public and possibly even aviation.
So
No, Barbados is not like Trinidad.
let me cut
No.
you there for 1 second, Charles, and yeah, started to answer a very important question that I know a lot of people listening to this would want answered. So this is something that I hear from a lot of operators in different countries, especially people who sometimes visit Barbados, and they'll tell you Barbados is one of the hardest places to get a drone into, or drones are banned in Barbados. Is something that we hear very often in Trinidad. So I would you tell me, are drones banned in Barbados?
There's a temporary ban on the importation of drones. Listen very carefully to the terminology
Right,
on the importation of drones. Okay?
right.
So if you want
Uh-huh.
to bring in a new drone, you have got to seek permission to do so. In other words, the ban means that you can't bring it in willy nilly. It doesn't mean that they're illegal or you can't bring them in. The procedure is that you apply to the Prime Minister's office, Ministry of Defense and Security, with a cause, and it's done on a case by case basis.
Right.
Obviously, the commercial pilots have a good case. The recreational pilots have to justify their case for bringing in a drone, and the Prime Minister's office will either approve or not approve that application. Once that application is approved, you can take this letter then um, to the Ministry of Telecommunications, who issues the spectrum license for the frequencies that the drone uses between controller and craft, both in
Right.
terms of control frequencies and video feedback frequencies. Um, Once the telecoms department sees that approval from the Prime Minister's office, you will be issued with a spectrum license, and with that spectrum license, then you can then import the drone, because when the drone lands and customs looks at it, that's what they're going to ask for. Where is the spectrum license? And once you can produce a spectrum license, you pay your duties and you go. If you cannot produce the spectrum license, it will be
Mhm.
confiscated. And this is
Right.
because there was no set legislation in place to manage this stuff. You know, people have a lot of public privacy concerns. People have a lot of concerns about public liability if a drone drops and damages someone or property, who is liable. If there is no legislation for litigation for the protection of the public,
Right.
the safest thing to do is to halt the importation of them until these things can be put in place. Now, there's a draft legislation which is under consideration and when approved by the House of Assembly, by the Cabinet, and these rules are in place. I would expect that this drone will be this drone ban will be probably lifted, because there would then be some sort of criteria under which importation can be done.
Understood. So that would be the instance of a local operator trying to import a drone. What would be the procedure for, let's say, someone visiting the island, a tourist coming in for a 2 weeks or a vacation, short-term periods?
They go on the government portal. There's a form there, and they make application through that form, and they will get a response within a couple of days. It's very responsive lately.
Right.
So we use it whenever we have to fly a mission. We have to use it anyhow. If you want to fly somewhere, you have to seek permission and give these your references, the altitude, blah 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 blah, and you get it back. You get it back fairly quickly.
Okay. And so
So
that would be the only
that's what
requirement.
that's what a tourist would do, or a person coming in to do commercial work would do. They would apply through this form, which goes to the Prime Minister's office, and then it's shared with the Civil Aviation Authority. The Civil Aviation Authority is actually the body that approves the application.
Well, that's nice to know, because there's the big misconception that drones are totally banned in Barbados, and you hear a lot of people in Trinidad say that you don't want Trinidad to turn like Barbados in terms of not being able to fly at all. So it's good to get
You
that clarification.
can fly on the permission. You just got to follow the rules, the temporary rules that are in place until the permanent legislation gets tabled. There are some measures that obviously government and the authorities had to take to protect the public and to make it a fairly manageable activity.
Right. Understood. So as you mentioned, the legislation, has the association been involved in the creation and manipulation of that legislation?
Yes, actually, about a year or so ago, just over a year ago, we had maybe a little bit more, because I think it was during COVID. The meeting was done with the minister and the key players, the police, etc. A Zoom meeting, virtual. Really, legislation was we went through it basically line by line, and it's a fairly beefy document. It was a fairly long virtual meeting.
Right.
And some areas were redlined and stuff, and obviously they took input from BUEVA as the administrative body for both commercial and recreational pilots in Barbados. Subsequent to that, we've met with the Civil Aviation Department, and things have changed slightly in that the PMO's office has assigned the CAA as sort of the front runner in this thing, the key person, and they actually have a specific person now that's their job. They just deal with that policies. So they will be the person basically hammering out the final details of the legislation and stuff, with input from BUEVA, BUEVA's input from its members, which were both recreational and commercial. So obviously they can't go all over the place. So they had a focal point that represents the industry, and we raise all the points that have been brought to us by our members, and that we learn from just being around in the industry. And they were extremely receptive, and they're very collaborative in their efforts to make a safe airspace for drone operation in Barbados, and a meaningful legislation.
That's good to hear. So the formation of that association is something that a lot of the other islands, including Trinidad, I think should also look at forming as well. I know there was conversation that I was a part of some years ago with regard to forming something similar locally, but it didn't really leave the ground. So going back to Bueva, how many was your current membership look like? How many members do you have right now?
But on paper, we have about 37 persons. Um, so the membership would be split between individual and company. So yeah, but we have about 37 registered um, members at this point in time.
And you all do annual AGM, and you all elect
There's
different
a constitution, there's
leaderships.
an AGM, you know, the normal parliamentary procedures for a nonprofit.
Right. Okay. So, in addition, is there anything else that is provided in addition to this representation when it comes to interface with the government arm that controls drones? So you're a
Yeah, well,
member of the association.
that's one of the main functions.
Hmm.
Like, is between decision makers, you know, influencer when it comes to policies, a representational point for members. We also like to do a lot of information dissemination, both to
Right.
members and to the public, because there are sometimes very strange ideas about drones. You know, when you hear the word drone, you think Predator and Raptor, which is the U.S. Air Force
Yep.
type
Hmm.
military drones, and people think about all kinds of things. And you know, a couple of years back, an assassination attempt was made on President Maduro in Caracas
Right. Yeah.
uh, with a
Using a
drone,
drone. Yeah.
right? And so people see the nefarious purposes for it.
Yep.
Um, you know, I can tell you, if you try to bring in something out of the States that spreads, um, obviously, they think about, first of all, where is it going? Is it one of the countries that's on the list of places that we can send technology to? What's it going to be used for? You know, this thing can disseminate chemical agent, this kind of thing.
Right.
Um, I mean, that's the way the world is. People will find some bad uses for anything that was intended for good.
Yep.
So some of these checks and balances are not without reason. It doesn't have to happen in your country for you to take precautions against it. You learn from other people's mistakes,
Hmm.
right? So the governments of the Caribbean have obviously maybe not experienced any bad usage like drug transportation. Well, you can't say it. They haven't experienced it. You wouldn't even know what drug transportation was
Yeah.
because they will be black, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously, the authorities have to make some sort of effort to control any activity that goes on within the country. So we have got to assume a role of cooperation and collaboration with all the moving parts, both um, the management side and the legislative side, as well as the user side. So some of the other things we would do is provide training, you know, try to do like workshops and stuff, PSA, send out stuff on social media, keep our website pretty up to date so that people can uh, find out information. And this is extremely important, especially for foreigners who want to find out what's going on. We are the focal point. They call us, um, and we will answer the questions that they have to the best of our ability.
That's nice, man. That's good that you all have that facility in place. And do you,
Yeah.
so right now you think the current legislation that is going to be put out there strikes that balance between managing some of the fears while still allowing the country to benefit from the technology? Or do
Yes, I
you see
believe. I
some things
mean,
that could?
I don't think that the government of Barbados, or not. I don't think the government of Barbados is not against utilizing technology
Mm,
um, in the furtherance of
right.
business. They're not they're very proactive about technology and using technology to improve Barbados and get it up to first world level. but they have to balance, and in the Caribbean, you find that there's usually no one agency that has control over things. In the States, you got the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. They pretty much control everything, including the military traffic, right? So a drone operator doesn't have to play with any other organization but the FAA for your Part 107 or whatever in the States. Here, you got to deal with telecoms because the frequencies have to be licensed by that department. You got to deal with defense and security because what you are doing as it affects the security of the citizens of Barbados is under their review. You got to deal with civil aviation because, civil aviation, that's self-explanatory. And you have to deal with your traffic control because you're supposed to let the air traffic controllers know what is in the air, even though it be at a low level. They may or may not see the need to put out a NOTAM on it. If you got specific flights at specific altitudes in specific areas, it will probably result in a NOTAM. If you have a fireworks, for instance, the New Year's, there was a fireworks display, the NOTAM came out on that, to avoid that flight path. If we're doing a regatta out to sea, and the guy is flying pretty high, you want to make sure that there's no problem there. But I will say, with the level of technology now, even the drones have all the same equipment as the planes, where they squawk and they notify each other that I'm here, kind of thing. And pilots can avoid and PICs can avoid.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you guys? You mentioned your 107. Now, I am a licensed 107 pilot, and I believe you are as well.
No, I'm not a 107. I don't need to. I don't need to be a 107 because I don't fly in territories that. And 107 is not the difficulty, but the expense and stuff. We just deal with our commercial certifications, and I've done the certification in the UK. I've done the certification in Canada. But the only U.S. territory I've ever flown in
That's fine.
is Puerto Rico.
Is there any intention to have a local license for Barbados? Because, for instance, in Trinidad, our legislation speaks to a license, but that has been on the book since 2016. And every time you ask about it, it is always on the way, but it has never been released or finalized. I'm not sure what's keeping back the progress right now.
No, in Barbados right now, they're private sector companies that issue basically proficiency licenses.
Okay.
But in a recent discussion with CAA, they are going to assume the lead on this. They will actually certify the private sector people who do the testing, but they will issue the license, and they will you will need to have a pilot's license in Barbados in the near future, which would be probably part of the submission package for flight permissions. Currently, yes, there are licenses, but they are not government-issued licenses. This will soon happen.
Are any of the international ones recognized in Barbados as licenses?
Yeah. A license, basically, if you come with the FAA, I have a FAA license, but it's not a Part 1. I don't have the Part 107. Right. But Canadian civil aviation, UK civil aviation, they are accepted. That's what the tourists that come here use, and the visitors that come here use. They wouldn't have a local one.
Right. Yeah, the reason I ask is because we don't have, like I said, we don't have the local one here, but officially we don't recognize any of the international ones either. So, you have a bit of an issue. So we have local pilots that do have, let's say, for instance, the PFCO from the UK, and some of the guys have their Canadian license, and some of them have the 107 from the States. But nothing is officially recognized by our civil aviation just yet. Some of them just got it in an effort to prove their proficiency at the craft.
That's the other thing. I mean, it's like a lot of people, the 107 is very detailed, and, US airspace is very complex.
Yep.
And the hardest part of the 107 is basically learning all those zones and areas, restricted areas and stuff like that. It's basically the same information that a Cessna pilot would have to know, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of overkill here because we don't have that kind of airspace.
Mhm.
We have a number of restricted zones, a number of designated zones, and we're working towards establishing a free flight area. And once the free flight area is established, you will just send in your normal application for
Right.
flight, and it will be approved or denied based on the format of the license. Because what we are suggesting to civil aviation is that the format of the license is such that you can look at the license and see what level the person is at, right? So if the license format comes back that you're a student pilot or beginning pilot and you apply to fly someplace fairly close to a restricted area, you would
Right.
probably obviously be denied. If you are obviously an instructor level or, you know, heavy duty commercial pilot level, and you apply to fly close to the said restricted area, you may be approved, or you most likely will be approved because you're assumed to have the knowledge and the controls against flyaway and the management of
Mhm.
of your flight systems that you do not pose a problem, right? And also the obviously the level of equipment that you would have.
Yeah. And you wouldn't just anybody wouldn't have access to that level of equipment. So that's a good step for them to have. Are there any fields in Barbados that you see drones benefiting the growth and development but aren't currently being used in?
Fire suppression.
Ah,
Um, we have not like Trinidad, not like the central bank or well, our central bank is installed for here. But like yours, there's some buildings in downtown, Port of Spain.
right. Yeah.
Um, I don't even know if they have ladders that tall, to be honest with you. You know,
Mhm.
ladders can go up pretty high, but I mean, there's a structural limit to ladders as well. So when you start going above 10, 15 stories, um, you know, speaking subject to correction, I think you start to go to the range of really effectively firefighting. So we are seeing the possibility of um, using specialized drones to assist fire departments in this area. I mean, these drones would obviously the two considerations in a drone of this nature would be endurance, how long it stays up there,
Right.
and the ability to deliver payload fire retardant.
Mhm.
Um, so that lends itself to the thither application where the drone is actually tethered to a tank and a power source on the ground. And it goes up and it does its work in a sustained fashion. Obviously, also fitted with infrared to see what is the condition of the fire, this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and also
Hotspots and so
give
on.
hotspots. Also give the incident management an opportunity to see where to deploy resources, the greatest area, the greatest need area for the deployment of the resource
Right.
and for the response of actual fire officers who may be in the building. So
And
that's
something
one.
that right. Sorry.
Yeah. Pretty much everything else. We see a big need, and there's been a proposal in for some time for national level leak detection. We get a lot of burst pipes and stuff, a lot of water wastage.
Right.
Um, you know, as the infrastructure is updated, um, you know, it becomes more manageable. But to be quite honest, in the Caribbean, you know, the geography, the geology of our islands is such that even with the best laid plans, you get a lot of ruptures and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
you drive in on a road, where a pipe is under, the road is well made and stuff, but we got limestone, you get pressure, whatever. You know, if it isn't buried deep enough, you know, there's all kind of engineering issues as to how deep they could put this thing. Um, to protect it from load bearing damage. Plus, a lot of the things were old. A lot of the infrastructure was old. They're systematically refurbishing this now. But leaking, what is called non-revenue wastage, the component here is very high compared to the global recommended standard. So that's one area that we really would like to encourage government and the statutory body to examine. As I said, there's a proposal in there for some time. And we've actually got the capability to do this right now, but we just have to wait for go ahead.
Okay.
Or for consideration.
That looks pretty promising.
I can't speak to it looking promising. It's a feasible exercise, but it's the decision of government to decide if that's something they want to get involved with.
And I like the term that you use though. The wastage. What is it exactly?
Non-revenue wastage. NRW, non-revenue wastage. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it's stated like that, you get a different impact on it. Because the government
that's the international terminology for it. That's the international terminology for it, and it's actually a ratio and percentage. So you know how you're doing from a global standpoint.
Okay, and I know. So when we see your president, Miss Mottley, speaking internationally, I know that Prime Minister, your Prime Minister, Mottley, speaking about things like climate change and the impact. Some of the things I've been involved in terms of drones and especially the the environment is around persons using drones to measure climate change and erosion over a period of time. And I know that is something that she has always stated, that the larger countries are the largest contributors to it, and the smaller countries are the ones that pay the largest price for it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is being used in that way right now in Barbados? So we're talking about mangrove, coastal erosion, hills and seasides environment, that type of thing.
Well, the University of West Indies would have access to that sort of technology. I know there's a marine research unit from McGill University that has been stationed here for years. I know they were doing some stuff with tidal drift. I myself did some stuff with Saragossa drift, plotting, and I've spoken to people from UWI that were interested in tidal measurement, impact on the coral reef. The same Saragossa in terms of how it affects and measuring its drift, etc. So the scientific community or the academic community is also involved in utilizing drones, either from a research standpoint or an educational standpoint, where they're teaching as part of their robotics course. So, but the academic sphere of things is basically restricted to Polytechnic, the university, McGill University, and maybe some NGO organizations that are here doing that kind of work. It's not really out there in the public operators domain, unless somebody is specifically contracted to do that on behalf of one of these agencies, and they would have to basically know a little about the topic.
Yeah, understood. Okay. So after talking about universities, we have the persons coming up and going through universities and being exposed to the different facilities and the technologies that are out there. What's some of the advice that you would have for the up-and-coming persons in the industry, or persons looking at the industry and not sure how to get into it or become a part of the drone industry?
There must be opportunities for these youngsters coming up now. I've been in some things before that started out as fairly niche and exclusive, and then they became saturated. I came from an IT background, and when I first got into IT, you were on top of the world. There weren't that many people playing around in that space, and then everybody was in IT, and it became a situation, of too much competition, too many players, too much price variances and stuff like that. I expect to a lesser degree, there will be this sort of a trend in the drone industry. There are some natural barriers, which are the price of professional equipment, and the knowledge that you must have as a pilot in charge to succeed in this business and building the reputation, etc. But any youngster leaving who I am one for encouraging entrepreneurship. Start as early as you can. Be your own boss. Be your entrepreneur. Build your business, and create some generational wealth for your children and their children to continue in something that you have established. It's feasible and prudent to start with a machine that is multi-use. You got to probe around first and see which area you're gonna decide you're gonna get into in the drone industry with space, right? So you until you make that decision, and you make that decision by finding out how your customers respond, right? And I always tell people you got two elements out there. You got two types. You got the customer, you got the client, right? The customer is the guy that just there's no loyalty or anything. They just come in and they want a job, and they will take the least expensive operator. The client is one who you're dealing more in a consultant role with, and you are applying you're imparting your knowledge to them and providing them with additional services and enhanced services and stuff like that. So you determine how you're going to balance. You have to have a balance of both, right? The return client and the one-off shot customers, maybe some return customers as well. But when you find out where you want to focus and where you're most effective and where you're getting the most revenue stream activity, then you can decide, okay, let me get some of the best equipment available in that space or to service that space. Because then you have the customer base to support, to get a return on investment on your equipment, right? So the main thing would be to dip your feet in the water, get a fairly decent multi-purpose drone. You're probably looking really at somewhere anywhere between to 2,500 Barbados and 8,000 Barbados, right? And that will allow you to do most of the things that you need to do to find out which area you really want to concentrate on.
And hopefully as the market continues to grow, as the price of some of these things start to come down. Relatively.
It's a double-edged sword because the cost of components come down, but the level of sophistication goes up. Which then negates the reduction in the chip.
Yeah.
It's one thing, but you're putting in 3 and 4 times more chips. So the price is still going up. Yep. It may not be going up as much as it could have gone up without a reduction in the price of chips, but it is going to go up because these things are getting better and better. What's happening is that you're getting more powerful drones at the lower end of the scale than before, because the drone that I fly now for, like, let's say $15,000 was a $60,000 drone before.
Yeah.
And these drones now do the same thing basically, and have the added advantage of rapid deployment.
But what some of the companies also done, like DJI in particular, have limited the features that their cheaper drones that are even more capable now, what they're able to do. So they took away some of the automation features.
The Mavic competes with the M series, and they purposely limit the Mavic. So if you want certain things, you still got to go to the M series.
Yeah.
But there are very few people in that M series space in Barbados. There are very few people in that M series space. So it's not really, it doesn't really affect us as such. But I think one of the more lucrative, or should I say interesting areas would be actual building of drones, purpose-built drones. We have a lot of
Right.
purpose-built applications here. We have things, that people could do. We have crops and stuff here that aren't really large scale in other places, and there's no solution set to harvest these things. So people that can build specialized craft that can harvest things like golden apples or whatever, breadfruits, whatever, that might not be a big deal in other countries because the pay rate is probably lower in those countries.
Yeah.
Barbados has to look at ways of um, really, really boosting the productivity and the return on investment in agriculture.
And I think there's a push you're seeing a lot happening in a lot of Caribbean countries right now. People that
Yeah.
drive to get towards getting away from the energy sector and pushing a lot more towards agriculture and using the technology to get there. To an extent, I think that we're still a little bit behind in Trinidad because, for instance, we can't import spraying drones at all, even for the purpose. There's no permission that you can get really. There's no variation that is willing to be issued for the importation of a spraying drone.
One question: Do you have spears? Do you have crop spears in Trinidad? Planes?
No, we don't. We used to have crop spraying planes. I don't know if they still operate or if they. I don't think they still fly for the purpose of spraying, even if those planes are still operational. And I know for a fact that we don't have any crop spraying drones.
So the point I'm getting at, if you had crop spraying planes before, is this now some sort of legislation that has stopped aerial spraying?
So
if not, why can't a drone do it? A drone is a much more controlled unit.
So planes used to fly from my
stuff is much more controllable.
Right. So from my limited understanding of it, the planes used to fly to spray cane when the cane industry was something that was ongoing in Trinidad. And when the cane industry was shut down, I believe that crop spraying plane industry went with it. I'm open to be corrected on that. But there's said to be a push on agriculture, but things to make the process more efficient, such as drones that would have a huge impact on that industry, we still aren't allowed to import for that purpose. Even if it's limited to specific companies, or let's say a specific agency owns it and is operated by somebody that's capable, it still isn't allowed to that extent.
Well, that is one of the main purposes for an association, to make representation, because in a lot of cases, decision makers are not expected to be experts. Politicians are not expected to be experts in all their ministries or all the portfolios that they're assigned. You could get a doctor assigned to be in the Ministry of Agriculture. His training all through his life was being a medical practitioner, but he has to come on board. He depends on his PSs. He depends on the people, the civil servants who have been in the industry for a long period of time to guide him in policy making decisions. But sometimes you need someone with actual focused industrial experience to come and say, listen, what are your fears? What was the reason for not allowing it? Obviously, the main reason is collateral contamination.
Yep.
Spraying a chemical in one zone that drifts into another zone and kills another crop that is not designed to service, or causing health hazards to the general public. There's two aspects of aerial spraying. The drone is the last part. The major parts of aerial spraying are determined at the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture level. What chemicals can you use?
Right.
Are they wide spectrum or narrow spectrum? What is the effects and what precautions have to be taken by human beings if they should be exposed to this chemical? After all that's decided, and they say, well, chemical A or chemical B or combination of chemical A and B are good for this particular crop or whatever, then the deployment mechanism comes into play. If you're dealing with a plane, you have very little control against swash and where that goes. Something like a T-20 or T-40 is flying at ground terrain, follow 3 meters above the crop.
Yeah,
the swash pretty much ends at the boundaries of the mapping for that field, right? And having actually done that, you stand, even on a windy day. I mean, in all the spraying we've done, I've only once experienced a few trinkles of droplets that I felt, and that was with the craft coming back for landing,
Right.
But normally you don't get this collateral extra spraying. So it's a very control element to the point where you can spray herbicides to kill grass on the outskirts of a field and not affect the crop that the herbicides would kill, a couple of feet away. So it's a fairly precise deployment. Your spray nozzles and stuff can be adjusted to deal with that, and it's all software controlled.
And it's good to have that feedback. And there's a lot of things that's something that a lot of people don't have that experience with. So they just hear spraying and think of, people could be hurt by the swash from coming out.
Drone spraying is a lot more precise, even than the manual spraying. You probably don't get that collateral stuff, but you get a lot of wastage of chemical. You don't get it with drones. It's a much more efficient operation and quicker.
And that's something that the association has played a big part in regularizing in Barbados.
No, we've played no part in that. That's something that just happened. That was a private sector initiative, and you just got involved with it from a consultancy point of view.
Okay, so people just basically saw the benefits of it and decided that and decided to make it as benefit, seen the benefits of it and made it as beneficial as possible.
Correct.
And work within the frameworks that they have set out to, promote the industry. Yeah, I think the restarting of the restarting of the conversation around having an association in Trinidad is something that needs to happen, so that there is a collective voice and it's not just everybody has their own corner of opinion and trying to talk to somebody that they might know, because that really
and then you get all the the private interests and stuff as opposed to the industrial interest. An association has industrial interests. When individuals go, they have personal interests, which may not correspond with the industrial interest. So you really need an association to make sure that the playing field is level and that people get the correct information, the decision makers get the correct information, and there's a focal point for management with all the operators within the industry, whether they be recreational or commercial.
Do you know of any other associations besides BUEVA?
You mean drone associations?
Yeah, drone associations in the region.
In the region? Not offhand, I've actually not. I admit I have not done any research into it, but no, I just haven't done any research into it, so I can't answer to that.
I've done some briefly, and I haven't been able to find one. BUEVA is the first one that comes up, but you don't tend to find any others regionally, at least.
Okay, this is something the other territories really need to investigate if they want to go further, both in terms of lobbying and in terms of having a say in because civil aviation departments and decision makers are always open to hearing what the people on the ground have to say. And if they don't have that input, they make decisions based on whatever information they have at their disposal. And information is let me rephrase. They make decisions based on whatever data they have available. And data has to be correlated in a particular way for meaningful information and meaningful decisions to be made. You can get a whole bunch of data that can take you down the wrong path. Right? Yep. So And you only get that informational ability when you sort of know what's going on in the industry. And they don't have the time for that. That's not their job. You know, they're not pilots, they're ministers or whatever, air traffic controllers, you know. Yeah, I mean, this is general. I'm speaking generally. It's not a criticism by any means.
Yeah.
I've seen ministers
I understand.
that are
That's
party
exactly what happens.
in the first short space of time. So, and as I said, the safety net is the PSs and the people who have been doing this all their lives, the civil servants.
Yeah.
This just doesn't go in there and decide, blah, you know, I doing this or whatever. He takes advice from his subordinates, and then he presents to cabinet. You know, that's how things go in democracy.
So, Charles, we've had this conversation going for a little while, and I don't want to take up your entire afternoon. I just wanted to ask one final question before we go. What do you want to see for the direction of drones going forward in both Barbados and the Caribbean as a region?
I want to see a full understanding by the public of the use of drones, a way to get rid of this idea that drones are going to spy into our private lives and, you know, be a nuisance, etc. Drones that are used for surveillance, you will never know you're being surveilled. You know, they're high enough up with good enough optics to you don't hear them, you don't know they're there, and they're surveilling you. And if that's happening, that's for a reason. They don't have the time to be looking into somebody's backyard unless criminal activity is suspected. So the use of drones is either going to be someone who is really just trying to relax and it's just like motor car racing or fixed aircraft flying or whatever. It's just a recreation. They're gonna go have their fun and they're gonna come back down. You know, the usage, the usefulness of these things, firefighting, deployment of first aid, eventually deployment of packages, the creation of we already have what I consider stifled economies. In other words, you know, the job opportunities for our youth are becoming harder and harder. Got a lot of qualified people coming out of the tertiary institutions, and you know, have to take things that you know just to get some revenue to support their families themselves. There's not enough spaces out there for the people that are coming on the market. So we got to create entrepreneurship. We got to create areas and spaces within the entrepreneurship umbrella to find your own niche and to make things, you know, make revenue. So one of the main things is to sensitize the public to the usefulness of drones and the fact that, as in anything else, anything can be misused, but you can't take the minor cases of misuse and condemn a whole industry. People don't condemn cars. Cars are used in thefts and murders and all kinds of things, hit and runs. You know, that's a very good example. So I mean, you know, there's no need to fear drones. The second thing I would like to see is some sort of organization within each territory that brings policies within the commercial and recreational sector together and acts as a middle point to decision makers and legislators on behalf of its members. All right. And third, I would like to see certain industries embrace the technology. You know, the gas and the gas and fuel industry, the communications, cell tower inspections. Bell Solar has already sort of seen the usefulness of it, and you know, we need to keep situations where there's continuous education through these organizations. The youngsters who want to come on board, for instance, a guy coming on board in solar inspections in 4 years' time will not have not from a level of competition, but from a level of technology within the solar farms themselves, will not have as much of a market for solar inspections as there is now, because there are solar farms now that can self-inspect right now as we speak. Right? So you go to a guy that has one of those farms and say, "Oh, I want to petition you to do a contract," and they'll go, I can look at all the stats on my cell farm from my cell phone.
Yeah.
I can look at all the stats on my solar farm on my cell phone. So the only thing keeping it open right now is the cost of that level of solar farm. It's like basically almost 3 times the cost of a normal solar farm. So you got a little space for the industries to survive a little bit in that area, in that niche, until the technology becomes less expensive or whatever. You have to be constantly aware of where you are and what's happening globally in the industry, because we deal in spaces of obsolescence. So you could be in a very lucrative area right now that could be obsolete in 4 years. So you got to keep forward thinking all the time. What other areas do I move into? How do I downscale from this? How quickly do I have to make back my money? This kind of thing, right? But I think once we get communities together, and then once each country has its own community, and then we communicate at organizational level, association levels, in a Caribbean grouping or whatever, I think that's the way forward.
Hopefully that is something that we can achieve in the short term, and we don't have to wait years to see that come to fruition. And I think that I think Bueva has gotten that off to a very good start, and I hope that other countries could take note of that and follow in your footsteps, and even take it to another level, whatever that level may be.
Correct.
Yeah. So Charles, thank you very much for your time today. For persons that may want to get on to you in terms of collaboration, additional information, or getting on to the association itself, where can persons reach out to you?
The easiest thing to do is to just send an email, partner@cpnetconsultancy.com. Correction, cpnetconsultancy.biz. I will respond to any emails coming there. You'll see more. So that's the corporate group email.
Okay.
And if you go on any of our social media, you'll see the contact information via WhatsApp. We are also very easily, because a lot of people in this industry want information. No, they don't want to send an email out.
Yeah.
I'm one of these people. I when I go on a site for support and stuff, and I don't see a chat facility, I dive with them. I'm not waiting on emails. There's a chat facility on our website and everything. So one way or the other, we'll respond to you. We try to respond within 24 hours.
Good. So I'll have a link. I'll have links to everything that we mentioned, to Bueva, to the email address that you put out in the show notes description. So thank you very much, Charles, for taking the time to have this conversation with us today. And hopefully the listeners gained a lot from it. I know I did. And, there's a lot of work to be done in the industry going forward. And thank you guys for all the work that you have done in Barbados and clearing up a lot of misconceptions that have been out there in the industry. So hopefully people can get that takeaway from this as well. And yeah.
All right, Alan. Well, thank you very much for having me and inviting me to the show. Anytime you need to follow up on any particular topic, feel free to reach out. We don't have any issues. If you want to get sample constitution or sample guidelines for an association from us, also reach out. I'll be happy to share those with you.
Most definitely. Thanks very much. You made it through. How did you enjoy that conversation? Let me know in the comments. Leave us a review. Send me an email. Reach out to me on social media. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see more. Let me know what questions you want answered. Anything I didn't ask Charles that you want to know about, let me know. And as usual, all the links, everything that we spoke about in that conversation will be in the description and the show notes for this episode. So you could feel free to check that out if you all need more information. Now on to our video of the week. And our video of the week is brought to you by CPNet Consultancy. And this video just basically is a highlight reel of some of the services offered by Charles and his team. So it just shows you them carrying out some of their operations and everything from preparing for a thermal inspection on a solar farm to conducting agricultural spraying with a crop sprayer. If you guys want to get in touch with Charles, all his contact information on the website for CPNet Consultancy will be in the description again. And as our show for this week, if you enjoyed this episode, guys, let me know what you thought about the conversation. Feel free to share it with your friends. Share with anybody you think. If you're traveling to Barbados and you need some assistance getting your clearance for your drone, if you need any assistance with it, feel free to reach out to the Barbados UAV Association. If you are a local operator in Barbados and you didn't know about the association, maybe you should think about joining them and seeing, what the association is all about and how it could help you advance you in your drone journey. As always, you can find the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And please leave us a rating or review, as it really helps the show to grow. And we love the feedback that we get from you guys. So thank you very much for that. You can also follow the show on all your favorite social media platforms to stay up to date with all the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me this week, and I will see you in our next episode.